Who knows what Jay-Z, J.K. Rowling, Bill Gates and Oprah Winfrey all have in common? Okay, I will tell you then. They have all overcome failure in one shape or form to go on to gain success in their respective careers. Welcome to My Perfect Failure. Join us as we delve into the world of our perfect failures. We will interview, explore, and discuss how our perfect failures can lead us to success. Join us and tune in.
Welcome everybody to another episode of My Perfect Failure. Today, as always, I'm super excited because I have another amazing guest for you. So joining us today is a visionary leader, award-winning author, TV contributor, TEDx speaker, and management consultant. Approaches tested through projects with top high-tech companies like HP and Cisco, have earned praise from Harvard, Yale, Columbia, and Cornell professors. Her latest book, How We Choose to Show Up, distills over 20 years of research into a model for thriving, helping people and companies connect, innovate, and grow. Her book integrates neuroscience, psychology, behavioral economics, and business practices to drive success. So a very warm welcome to My Perfect Failure, Marcy Axelrod. How are you, Marcy?
Paul, it is such an honor to be here. And I'm super, super excited to explore showing up with, of all people, you. Such a rich background, such curiosity, the energy that you show up with, Paul. I mean, wow, I'm just thrilled to be here with you.
So literally, as we met virtually, I was just like, this subject showing up I think it's a massive subject, because I definitely would hazard a guess and say that I can't put a percentage on it, but if I was going to randomly guess, I would suggest that in the world, I think it's about 80%, maybe more than that, don't really show up in the way that we would truly love to, because we all have these dreams about doing, it might be the job, it might be going on a certain holiday, it might be, I don't know, it might be the gym, it might be nutrition, it could be any sphere of our lives, but we kind of put it over there somewhere as potentially unobtainable. So I'm keen to delve into how we can show up better, but also this podcast is about failure. So how do we show up after we've failed, after something that we didn't want to happen has happened? How do we develop the confidence and the courage and the behaviors to go again? So there's so much and more, but what I'm keen to do initially is to get a steer about how did you arrive at this time where you're really helping the world to understand how they can show up.
Yes. So as you can imagine, the lessons that stay with us, Paul, are the ones dealing with adversity, right? You find your calling when you're deep in the hole and you're suffering. So with me, that started at age 6. My family had moved and I was not really, I guess, getting the attention that I needed. And it turns out that stuttering was hereditary. So you mix the genetic predisposition with the environmental support, and I lost the ability to speak at age 6. So my stress was through the roof. There was really no one helping me. You know, I would go to answer a question at school and I would just be like, maybe a syllable or two would come out. And after, a short while, you just decide this isn't going to work. But you're so young. So you just keep getting up. You keep getting up. Try. And I mean, it got to a point where just everyone didn't want me to raise my hand. I mean, it was just the entire environment colluded to, I guess, do a combination of support me, but also help me not humiliate myself. So that's really where showing up started, because what I was left with is observing. I was very conscious, Paul.
Okay.
I am physically unable to show up as I choose. But all around me were all these people who could choose how they were showing up. And yet you had the bullies over there and the scaredy cats over there and this group there mistreating these people. And it was school, right?
Yeah.
We were young. Not everyone was kind. But to me, the lens was they can choose how they are showing up. And yet they're not. Why is that person not, being kind? Why is that person always having this issue? Now, granted, it was through a child's lens, but I had this awareness of people not choosing how they were showing up when they could. And it was through my desperate lens of, I can't, but you're throwing it away. So you can imagine the peak of emotion, right? And then my family, what a loving, supportive mom and dad, but were they really giving me what I needed? So that's how showing up started. And then, of course, I, studied psychology and neuroscience. The moment I could read, all I wanted to do was understand these intense emotions. So that's how showing up started. And then the first global studies with hundreds of thousands of responses were in 2001. And then it continued with evergreen research and survey work around how people show up.
Okay. So what's very interesting about you becoming acutely aware as a child that you weren't able to show up, you developed the stutter and kids are mean and kids say this and they say that. But so I guess what I'm really intrigued by is that I'm just thinking for a lot of children, and maybe there's even parents that are listening, or parents when they might be thinking about their children, they might be thinking about maybe actually that feels like me, and I've not been able to show up ever since. So I'm intrigued. What was it about you that enabled you to become aware, but actually tackle it, and actually not become overwhelmed by it, and actually let that dictate how you showed up?
Well, I mean, I think there were definitely times, especially when I was younger. Of course, I was overwhelmed by it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a desperation. And the programs for stuttering at the time, I mean, they didn't help you emotionally necessarily. They were giving me all sorts of tactical things like holding my consonants, and holding letters, and it sounded to me just, worse than just being quiet. I mean, ultimately, recognizing that everyone uses this phrase showing up, no one knows what it means.
Yeah.
When I give speeches, I start out with, I want to hear from almost everyone here. What is showing up? And I'm just going to go around the room and I want you to say it. And I get showing up is presence. Showing up is doing your best. But then I get the opposite. Showing up is like just getting off your couch and walking in. Like showing up is just being there, but not really even being there. So I get the extremes. And then I say, well, when you use the phrase, do you ever ask someone like, what did you just hear me say? And I help people to recognize the misunderstanding that's going on is rampant, because someone might hear about how you did your best and someone else might hear about how you were barely there. And I said, this is a big part of it. Our language is reductionistic. We take a phrase or a word and we think that we're on the same page, but you walk away thinking the conversation was about one thing and someone else thinks, and it turns out out of the University of Texas, there was research on this, putting some numbers on it. If you're talking to someone who you don't know, over 75% of the time, there's a substantive misunderstanding, but they don't even know. Both parties think that they're good. If it's your family, someone you're with all the time, what do you think the statistic is about how often there's a substantive misunderstanding?
What, within family? So what statistic for an understanding between family members?
Right. During just an average conversation.
You know what I would think is quite high, because the reason I say that is because of you can have seemingly bright people, could be a spouses that will have a conversation in the morning, in the afternoon when they get home from work. Yet, although they're bright, they will have a different perspective on whatever they're discussing or misunderstanding. So I'm going to give you a random stat that comes into my head. I'm gonna say I'm gonna say over 50%. I'm gonna say 60 something percent.
Wow. So you're actually more pessimistic than most. So it turns
Really?
45%. We get
Okay.
to 50. So just about 50%
I'm
of the
thinking
time
about me being
when someone
being
hears,
argumentative.
yeah, let me give you an example. So I walk into my teenage daughter's room. She's 18. And I say, good morning. And what I mean is, good morning. I love that you're here. You haven't left for college yet. I cherish that I get to just walk upstairs and say good morning. What is she here? Hi. Why aren't your grades what they should be? Why haven't you picked up your room?
Mm,
And all I've said is good morning. But to her, it's a different good morning than
yeah.
mine, right? And who's going to really take the time to say, did those words show up for you as I love and cherish you? How did those words show up for you in your world, right? So showing up, everything shows up. This is a core part of showing up. Everything. Not just our words, our attitude, our vote shows up. The light on the tree outside shows up. The decisions of the UN show up. A corporate brand shows up. A culture of the family. Everything is showing up, and it's showing up at every moment, which makes it both relentless and endlessly accepting. This is where the failure comes in.
So it's showing up. Is it developing a muscle where we're consistent and we're doing this in every sphere of our lives even?
Yes. So I call it a mindset. I call
Okay.
it the show up mindset.
Okay.
And with the show up mindset comes a number of beliefs about how the world actually works. And when you absorb the beliefs about how the world actually works, which by the way, it's based in neuroscience, it's based in evolutionary biology, psychiatry. I mean, my book is all science if people read it. So when you believe certain things, you show up a certain way, and the world shows up to you a certain way. And it's a way that's interconnected and integrated and loving and caring and freeing and healthifying, right? Right. It's also kind of integrated with something that creates longevity and wellness because it's how we're designed. It's the subtext. The book is about how nature designed humans to show up.
So what I took from part of what you just said, which is all wonderful, is that when we show up, invariably we're going to get rewarded in some capacity for that.
Yeah, right, because we will truly show up. Paul, I'd love to draw you out for a moment on
Okay.
something you said right before we
Yeah.
started the podcast, which is, your sense of how are people showing up to the world, and where it leaves them.
Well, I guess my initial thoughts, because I love the subject around showing up, and I think that, to my mind, I think that I guess I'm a bit biased here, but I definitely feel from my interactions that people have lost the ability to show up because we feel that the things that we would like to do, whether it be a career, whether it be, the house, whether it might be a certain level of fitness, it could be all manner of different things. I think to a larger extent, not there are people that definitely do show up and they are achieving that and they're going after things. But I think to a degree, I think a lot of us have actually given up on the idea of really showing up because we can view that as a domain for others who we admire. We look at them admiringly,
Uh-huh.
and we think, what a great actor, what a great athlete, what a great entrepreneur, what a great business person, what a great public speaker. And we have these dreams. They're dormant dreams, really. They're not dreams that we truly consider going after. They're dreams that sit just on the surface that really
Mhm.
don't go beyond that. And so that's why I'm very curious about showing
Mhm.
up,
Mhm.
why we don't show up, and you've given some examples already. But I'm particularly keen about solutions to showing up and how we can get everybody to build that showing up mindset that
Yeah,
you referenced earlier.
right. Right. So I want to just call out here to my good friend who's brilliant, who wrote the Hype Handbook, named Michael Schein. He also shares with me exactly the sentiment that you said, which is that so many of us kind of get to a point where, like, the dreams, we've kind of put them on the back burner for so long that we've come to an acceptance of just showing up. And we say, you know what, but it's the way it is. I'm going to pay the bills, the mortgage, the kids. And, my job's fine and it's secure and I'm just going to make the best of it. And we're just showing up to our lives, knowing that there's something pulling on us. There's a deep dissatisfaction that's brewing in the background, and this like malaise about like, this isn't quite what I bargained for. When I was younger, I wanted to be an astronaut and I had zeal. And then when I was a teen, my dreams, and now I'm whatever, I'm 40 to whatever, 35 plus, and things have settled, but it's like, what? And then we see others and it's like, oh, I don't have the courage that they do, right? So there's a lot there. And to that, I want to say yes. So my research across 20 years, the statistic that I mentioned in the book, 80% of Americans, and it may be true for other cultures as well, but the most recent research was just America, 80% of Americans just show up 80% of the time. And by just show up, what I'm talking about is not truly showing up and not being barely there. It's this vast mid-ground where, like, you just walk into something. Maybe you did a minimum preparation. Maybe you're like only somewhat well slept, which we all are. We're bringing emotions from the past into the current moment. We're half distracted, or maybe we're fully in it, but for only so long, and then we're kind of pulled away, and then we're back. So we aren't our best selves or our full selves more than 20% of the time at best.
Can I ask a quick question around showing up and about that barely showing up as opposed to hitting it full throttle? Do people sometimes, or are you aware of cases where people are more comfortable just doing it barely as opposed to going through full throttle because maybe they fear stumbling, maybe they fear it could be maybe people are lazy, that might be part of it, or it might be that sometimes people take solace in giving themselves a pat on the back by saying, yeah, I did show up today, but really we haven't maxed out on that. It's just really been surface level showing up, or barely is the term that you use.
Yeah. So I'll define these levels more specifically in just a minute, but to answer your question, just at the level of the continuum, which is 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Barely there, just showing up, truly showing up, and I'll show you the visual. The answer is that the most you can ever be your best really is like maybe 20%. And what I recommend to people, and I'm just trying to grab my continuum here, what I recommend to people is choosing the most important part of your day, or the most important people, or the most important one thing. Like, choose some aspect and truly show up for that. And I can explain what it means to truly show up for that. Because, like when you're meditating and you're supposed to focus on your breath, but then a thought comes in, and what you're really supposed to do is notice thought, let it go, back to the breath. Truly showing up is very similar to that pattern, because ultimately what we're doing when we truly show up versus just show up is we're literally switching attention systems in the brain from the right hemisphere to the left, and we go back and forth. This is the get it done, just show up mode. It manipulates the right arm in most of us, grab it, get it done, but that's an object. And if it happens to be a person we're in a meeting with, they're an object, and we just want them to get their stuff done so we can get our stuff done. And we aren't really noticing that, like, maybe they're holding themselves with a little bit of a slump, and maybe they're in pain, or maybe they're worried about something, and we don't ask. And the reason we don't notice it is because the part of the brain that notices it is actually the other hemisphere. It's the right hemisphere. This is the one that surveils, okay, I'll put the tangent aside, but this is the one that notices the emotion in your face and connects you and I at the level of our humanity. And if we're in get it done mode, literally, we will not see it. And there can be music on in the background that would normally make us sway and pull us in, but we wouldn't even notice it. And we don't notice the birds, and we don't notice that we're just with other human beings. So we mistreat people because like we're just like getting shit done, if you know what I mean. Excuse my language. And I want to put a visual to this because it's really darn important, right? So on the book, you see I've got a rainbow, and there's a reason. It's a natural series of colors that speaks to us because we are nature, right? We don't go into nature. We are nature, right? We aren't on the earth. We are of the earth. So I use the rainbow, and what I want to point out is that there's an inherent continuum, right? From 1, 2, 3, very simple, barely there, just showing up, and true.
Okay.
And the truth is, Paul, we're dancing along it all day long. We might wake up and feel great and kind of greet everyone with so much love and care. And when we think about getting our work done, we think about the relationality. Who are the people involved? How are they doing? How can I support them? That's truly showing up. And then kind of we're tired or grumpy and it's time for lunch and we're going down into the orange, into the yellow, or yellow and then orange and toward the red, right? And maybe we're just tired or done or someone pisses us off. And then we're in the red. We are barely there. Like that person I have to work with, they never tell me what they knew. If I had known that he knew that, I would have done my work in a different way, or I wouldn't have wasted my time. Like what? Now we're in the red. This is the left side of our brain. We're objectifying that person. And we need to reset our nervous system to be able to then switch into our right hemisphere, and get back to truly showing up. And we're dancing all day long. But the beauty of this is that everyone you see is too. And it's human nature, and it'll let us connect with compassion. So it's not the jerk in the cubicle next to me. It's, wow, didn't he tell me last week that his son was struggling with something and they were considering SSRIs to help him calm down in school? He was hurting other kids. You know what I'm saying? And it changes everything.
So is awareness massive for this? So obviously the tools that you've got in your book are key. So we'll put links to the books so people can get the book. But how important is obviously the tools that you put in there, but also awareness and maybe empathy as well?
Awesome. So Paul, awareness. And so I use a number of different words. Noticing, the main word I use is attunement. It is a version of awareness and noticing. I go beyond awareness and don't use it as the main thing. In fact, I have a paragraph about why attunement and not awareness. Like it seems like it's a more rare, difficult word to use, attunement, and people might not know. The reason is because awareness, I feel, it leads you right to the gates, but then it stops you. What do you do now? You're just at the gates. What attunement talks about, you aren't just noticing something, you're feeling it, you're absorbing it. So the outside world, what we call the environment, which is really not outside, it's really goes right through our skin, right through our skull, right through into our heart. You're attuning to someone. You're feeling it's changed. What you're experiencing from out there is now changing your physiology. And you can ask so you've got your chemistry changes. Maybe it's cortisol stressing you. Maybe it's oxytocin connecting you. Maybe it's adrenaline and your heart's beating faster. The point is, when you attune to someone, you're actually absorbing some of who they are and what they're experiencing right now. So now it's a shared experience, right? That is truly showing up. You're feeling them. You have that information. And ideally, and Paul, this is key. Ideally, now that you've gone to the gate and you've stepped through, right? It pulls you through. Now you're able to have an awareness of both the moment, what's going on, it's really rich now, and how you're showing up in the moment. So it's a dual awareness. Think about being in a theater, like it's watching a movie. You're totally subsumed in the movie, but somewhere in your mind, you're also like, I'm sitting in a seat, I'm in a theater, there's people around me. Oh yeah, popcorn in my hand. truly showing up, you don't lose sight of the dual awareness of being in the moment and how you're showing up to it for too long. I mean, we keep leaving it, but we come back. That's why the emphasis of the book is choose. Because we have agency.
So what's lovely about this, as you're talking, I'm thinking that this applies to every sphere of our lives. If you're at work and you're a leader, it applies to how we engage with staff colleagues. If we report into somebody, then it applies to how we engage our managers. If we're out shopping or at a restaurant and we engage with people, it applies to all those little engagements that we have. But sometimes we can feel they're innocuous. But sometimes you can be out and driving. You might have, I don't know, a set two with somebody, and it might spark a reaction, and we kind of show a lower version of ourselves. So I'm sure that the tools that you're providing in your book can help with those situations as well.
Yes. So very, very much. Just quickly, I want to come back to the word compassion that you used, and empathy and compassion. Truly showing up is compassionate. And I have a more developed continuum that under the 1, 2, 3, it goes into how on the left side, you're all about your self role and your mirror faces you and the world is all about you. And then as you move into the just showing up, you're starting to notice, but you keep kind of leaving, right? Just showing up. And as you then tune in more, you move more into the green, the truly showing up. So it's tuning in, and then there's a true being with. And the withness is that kind of extreme on the green side of truly showing up. So I explain how this transition takes place from the no empathy into the full empathy. And by the way, that is leadership. And that is great parenting. And that is leadership. And that is when you lay in bed at night and you say, I like myself. In fact, I love myself. And why? Because you probably also feel a love for everyone else at that point, at least a little bit, if not more, because you feel interconnected. Why? Because each day you're actually feeling each other. I want to talk here about a key part of showing up, because there are many levels, and I never know kind of how deep to go on a podcast, but I really respect the questions that you're asking. Is it okay, you think, with your listeners if I go 2 more levels about showing up?
Yeah, absolutely. We want people to engage what showing up really means and how they can bring it into their lives, whether it's from a career perspective, whether it's from their relationships with their family and their friends. So let's do it.
Okay. And so I'll bring this up close in just a minute. Okay. But what I want to explain is that we've just been talking about specific situations. So first I mentioned self, then I mentioned situation. There's one more S, which is society, right? The more beyond us. Think the word society is like everything beyond us. It can be a family, a school system, a company, a country. Okay. We are in those 3 roles at all moments. Okay. We evolved as human beings in 3 roles. We're not just a self. We're a member of a situation at all times. Even if we're laying in bed, if we're in the shower, if we're reading a book, we're a member of a situation. And we're always a member of something more. If we're reading a book, we chose to buy that book. We pulled through a 6-continent supply chain. Lord, like, we're always interacting as a member of society, of a situation, and as an individualized self. And showing up respects that, and it explains why that matters. You're like, well, so what? That just seems complicated. Why do I need that? And the reason is because there's a skill. There's a skill with each one. And it's like a simple thing. We want to be grounded in ourselves, right? That means know who we are and know where it came from, so that we have the mojo to like bring it out there. This is me, right? I'm not ashamed. I'm not afraid. This is me. So grounded in self. We want to be ready for our situations, right? This is the kind of instant thing versus planned thing, because there's always spontaneous stuff that shows up, But there's also the planned stuff. I'm going to be in a meeting with Paul. I can prepare for it. I can look at his background. So both. So there's,
Yeah.
right? And it's very much an alive, reverberative things. Everything I say is responding to, does he seem with me? Does he seem confused? Right? So like everything, there's an aliveness. So that's what it means to be in a situation. And then the skill, so we've got grounding ourselves, ready for our situations. And then there's a special word that is a connectedness. That's our skill for our societal role. And the word is all-telligent. And what it means is we are connected with society, steeped in care. Right? It isn't just a superficial, yes, we're all people, but I don't really care. It's a I am here like with an intent to serve type of care. And I explain in the book, I have a chapter on this, and I talk about how literally in our DNA, we have the same relationships as in the spiral arms of the galaxy. So I basically explain tons of science that connect us and explain what the connection truly is. So showing up recognizes we're in 3 roles, and there's a skill for each role: self-grounding, situational readiness, societal connectedness, or all intelligence. And that is what this is about, and it's related. Tell me if you can see it. I'm going to give it to you to put up there. So there's the 3 roles: self-situation, self-situation, society, the skills that go with each role, self-grounded, situationally ready, societally all-intelligent.
Yeah.
And then under it, I explain you have a choice. 1, 2, 3. And when you show up in one role, it's really hard to truly show up because you're all about yourself. And you're probably going to not even wonder, how does this person feel in my presence? In fact, I've got statistics around it, but I'll be quiet. There's actually one other chart I should show you. Yeah.
It's just as you're explaining, and I'm thinking about, so you mentioned at the top of the show around when you asked a group of people, everybody gave you a different example of what they viewed showing up as, and I would have given you a different one as well. So it's very interesting to listen to you to get a broader perspective of what showing up is, and about how it interplays with everything we do, how we can use showing up in every aspect of our lives. It almost, to me, almost makes us, this is just an initial interpretation, but it kind of, to me, is making us better human beings, better communicators, having far more awareness, a lot more control, compassion. So it's it's fusing lots of different elements together to really help us, not just us, but anybody that we engage with.
Right. So I'm merging mindfulness and kind of societal science and behavioral science. Yes. So you just mentioned so many important things, and what we haven't gotten into yet, but I can, if you like. What is a self? Because I explain it. What is a situation? I explain that a little bit, this reverberative dance. And what is society? Would you like me to talk about self? Because I think that's really like the elephant in the room. Yeah. So what I'm going to explain is something that Indigenous peoples have always known, something that is the core of every Eastern philosophy that's out there, and frankly, at the core of most other major religions as well, right? Which is that there's something we can call a big S self, and there's something we can call a little S self. And you probably know where I'm going. So the little S self is the mirrors right here, right? We're all little S selves as kids, because we don't yet have the ability to read someone else's mode of being and sense what they need, right? So big ego, small self, it's all about me. I'm going to achieve stuff. I'm going to get it done. The money, the house, the car. I care way too much about what people think of me. And ultimately, even if you achieve what you think you want, it's meaningless. So that's small S self. The big S self is the one that recognizes we are deeply and even intra-connected with everything that's out there. And Einstein has this wonderful quote that explains that we are all of a single one. For some people, they get it at a cognitive level, but it's words. For other people, they're like, that's woo-woo and mysticism. I don't know what you're talking about. But other people, especially those who meditate and who aren't in a rush and who really take the time to notice and be in their moments, they really know what I'm talking about. So I think that as you kind of read the book and understand like what showing up really is, it changes how you receive others. Relationships become deeper. You don't walk in triggered the moment you think about your teenage son who's been, doing what teenage kids do, right? Yeah, so there's built-in compassion and there's a built-in supportive, caring mode that makes us magnetic for invitations and for people to want to be with us and to promote us and to give us chances that we wouldn't normally have to have a broader impact. And I think that's what most of us are looking for.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really interesting in terms of the output that we will get from reading your book. And it's also interesting as well around the kind of the lack of insights that we have. Well, I guess I'm thinking about me actually. So I'm listening and observing and I'm learning that the interpretation I had of showing up was definitely limited. And I think that would definitely, you mentioned at the start of it, I said that a couple of times, that everybody gave you a different interpretation of what showing up meant for them. So the reason I say all that, because it really opens up a cascade of different opportunities and more awareness about how we can connect and how we can just make the most of every situation. That's pretty amazing.
Thank you. I'm just trying to be helpful. I mean, really what I'm doing is I'm switching the inward focused self mirror outward. I'm turning us to an outward focus. And Paul, if I could, I want to focus on you for a moment, and how amazing you are. I noticed that this coming July, which is coming right up, you will achieve the end of your fifth year. Your fifth year of this podcast. Do you know the number of people you have probably helped, the number of lives you have probably changed? And my guess is you hear from people saying, thank you, saying, Paul, you've made an impact. So can we elevate you for a moment and how you have chosen to show up with your time, with your effort, with your care, with your curiosity?
Yeah. Well, I guess for me, so what makes it great, the podcast, is from a selfish perspective, I want to learn. So I want to develop, I want to evolve. I do that by connecting people like you. And I get the opportunity to learn every week from meeting somebody, having wonderful conversations. But most importantly, I realize that if I've got questions, there's going to be other people that have got the same questions. If I've got challenges, there's going to be people that have exactly the same challenges. So this is really an opportunity for me I like connecting with people. The podcast is a wonderful conduit for that. And we can all learn together and really put out really valuable insights into the ether. And I will say to people, I love the mystique. So people contact me and they say that I love this episode and this and the other, that's amazing. But I also like the mystique. It's similar to your book. I looked at your reviews on Amazon. So you've got loads of reviews, amazing reviews from people that have read the book and they're using the book. But there's also people out there that may not leave a review, but you're impacting their lives already. They're doing things. They're impacting their lives at work, with their family, maybe the way that they're raising their children. It's similar to me with the podcast. I love the mystique of not always of thinking that there's somebody they're listening to this episode now. That they will get the book and maybe they will leave a review or they say that they really enjoyed it, but maybe they just go quietly about their journey and they're changing their lives. So I love the mystique of that as well.
Yes. And you pull people in by celebrating failure. Is it okay if I just mention a big failure of my life? Is that okay?
Well, absolutely. This is about failure, I'm curious about the intersection between showing up and failure as well. So please be my guest.
Yeah. So and I'm going to use the word book, but interpret that as a metaphor for creation of anything. We're always writing yesterday's book. By the time the ideas come out, your thinking has moved on. You've learned more. Maybe you would have said it differently. Maybe you think it could have been better. So this book, which by the way was a #1 new release on Amazon for over a week before I even launched it, like before I put out to anybody in the world, the book is out there. I went on, and I guess the publisher had uploaded files and said, I think it typically takes Amazon about a week to put it up there. So I just went to see if it was there at all. #1 new release. So here I am thinking, I would have said it differently. I would have been simpler. I would have given people the 1, 2, 3 of what to do up front, and I could say, I failed. I put my heart and soul into this, and someone might put it down after X number of chapters, and I didn't get to the what to do now. I could anyway. So this is, I think, how I would like for people to view showing up to the word failure, which is that every moment you're choosing how you show up. So right now, it's a fresh start. There is no way to fail. Even if you don't choose and you default show up, which is just showing up. Let's say you do it, you look like, oh my God, I've been just showing up for 50 years. My relationships aren't great. My marriage isn't really deep anymore, this and that, right? And I'm getting stuck in this dead end job that I'm, chained to because of my mortgage and all of this. Right now, choose how you're showing up. And all of a sudden, success. And look at everyone around you and know they get to be on their journey too. And allow that permission that you give them, you give yourself. And then you put it out there into the world, because our impact on the world, there's this great series of statistics by Nicholas Christakis. He's a professor at Yale. And he explains how what we do moves through society. And I talk about this. It turns out the 20 people who you are closest with are 45% more likely to do what you do. They just view it. But by the way, an action isn't just an action. An action has behind it some kind of emotion and some kind of thought. So they're thinking, feeling, and doing more of what you do. So they're 45% more likely to think, feel, and act that you do. It doesn't stop there. Those people then have friends and people they work with and their kids and spouses. Those next 20 people are 25% more likely to do what you do. Now, Paul, they've never met you, but it goes 2 people deep, but it doesn't stop. It turns out it goes 3 people deep. So your friends. Okay, think about Jacob's daughter, Jessica's best friend, David, who you will never meet, is 10% more likely to do what you do because you're doing it. Can we talk impact? It's 8,000 people, 20 times 20 times 20. And the reason that I use 20 is because the average person, according to Dr. Christakis, have kind of about 20 people around us who we spend most of our time with. 8,000 people. And by the way, it's every moment, because you're doing something at every moment. And even if you're alone, you're still making waves. You're still doing things. You're searching for something. You're walking around the house instead of sitting. You're still doing something that has legs in some way, creating the ripples. So our impact is massive, and it's just what you were saying. So whatever form of failure someone may choose to hold, like their sense of it from the past, right now you have a choice, and that's it.
It's like you say, how we choose to show up, so we can choose. That's very interesting, actually, because sometimes we feel, particularly with failure, that it's set, and we don't believe that we have a choice. And I think that, and I will say this analogy, that most people, and I think it definitely aligns to this conversation, but most people we admire, authors, academics, entrepreneurs, doctors, whatever it may be, they achieve excellence through difficult moments and they choose a certain way to navigate those difficult moments. And yeah, so I like the book because the book really embraces what you're talking about, that we have choices. And I think for many of us, I think that we don't really, I definitely feel that instinctively we don't feel we have choices because we haven't developed that show up mindset that you've spoken about. That really, for a lot of us, it doesn't exist. We default to accepting the situation. But what I wanted to ask you actually, just around that as well, it's just around, and this, I think you've kind of explored this as well, but I'm just keen to maybe ask this question. So people will be listening to this and thinking, amazing, definitely need to get this book. I really want to start showing up and embrace all the different things that you've spoken about. But then they might be thinking, well, I want to do that, but I know that maybe I've got maybe my nearest and dearest, maybe they need to read the book as well, because I know that when I'm looking to upskill myself and develop, that they might view this as, this Paul think he is trying to, you know, improve himself, and so because they do that because maybe they feel threatened by that. So I don't know whether you've got any thoughts around that.
People feeling threatened by learning about showing up?
Yeah, because some people, might have a vantage point that, when people are making waves, they want to go to that next level. And
Right.
maybe other people don't have the confidence to actually go on that journey with you.
Right.
And so is it a valid question? I don't know.
Yeah, no, I love this. So a very core part of showing up, a very core belief of showing up, you matter. And you matter massively, right? It gets to that impact that I just mentioned, right? And it gets to, we're not small as selves, even though we might have been taught to be. We are big as selves. We are designed to reverberate with the world, right? There's no you and me. Like, you're coming right in through my skin, through my skull, into me, and my physiology is changing in response to you. So in essence, I'm elevating everybody. There's no courage needed to learn about showing up, because what I'm elevating everyone. Look, you've already been showing up. And on some days, maybe it's, my God, I did a great job and I'm happy. And I really love that I left, my friend hugging me and feeling felt and feeling good about themselves and supported. And then on other days, maybe it's, my God, in the meeting, I bombed and I'm pissed at myself because I had really worked hard to show up a certain way in front of the boss and this person who makes me not feel good. So we all have those days, but we matter substantially. Scientifically, cosmologically, we all matter in a massive way. And I lay out all the support, and I want people to not need courage to learn the nuances around, here are just some beliefs that if you carry them with you, people will notice your presence and your charisma. When you walk into a room, they will notice your energy. And it will feel really good. And it will feel strong and welcoming at the same time, right? You will have both strength and warmth at the same time. And that is really magnetic. So please don't feel afraid to learn more. Okay. And I'll pause there. And I mean, also, people should reach out to me, because this first book was intellectual. And I think what I really need to do is write a story. I need to write a short novel about people who aren't showing up, who learn to show up. It's something that's fiction that we can relate to and all step into. But I think I had to write the intellectual scientific tome to get.
And I think that's important as well, because I think it's important that we understand the connection points about why this equals that.
Yeah.
So I think that's to me, that seems logical, it seems relevant, and I think it's something that we really can immerse ourselves into. And I was saying to somebody the other day, and your book applies. I think once you get a good book like this, it's not a one-time read. It's a read that you do numerous occasions. You have it by your bedside, you have it, on your dining room table, because you can use it in any given situation. And plus, we want to get to the point where it becomes a mindset. So we don't, and it becomes conditions. So I think this isn't a one-time read. It's something that we have as part of our toolkit.
Thank you. That would be my hope. And I'm about to write little situational show up stories. So if you have any that you want me to use, I would love to hear from you, Paul, and I'd love to hear from all of our listeners. Do this one. Like, what happens when you come home to your spouse?
Okay.
So used to a bad environment in the home. What happens when you're afraid before you present? What happens when you're, not really able to dive into your work and you're just putting it off, right? So I'm looking for the kind of classic moments where people would like direct support in choosing how they show up.
I think one that immediately comes to mind is public speaking. So public speaking. So if we've got an event we're looking to do, we don't really have that confidence at this point. It's like showing up in that guise, being as intentional and as confident as we possibly can be. And I guess inside we're concealing the fact that maybe not quite there yet. So there's a journey to be had. You can't start anything being an expert initially. You've got to go for that process. So maybe if people are going for that process and they've got some either public speaking or maybe a presentation coming up, it's showing up as best we possibly can.
Yes. And I live that every day. Someone from the United Nations headquarters reached out to me about 2 weeks ago about a speech coming up in November. So I put, I sent my proposal back and I'm kind of holding my breath to hear, because that is my gold star. Like my gold star isn't or corporate work. I've done 30 years of that. My gold star is the UN, it's Davos, it's bigger stages. And by stage, I don't mean like literal stage. I just mean impacting decision makers who can choose to infuse showing up through school systems, through educational systems, through systems of social justice. What does it mean for our social justice system to truly show up? Would racism disappear and anti-Semitism and ageism and ability isn't like, so anyway, the point is speeches, as a stutterer, I don't know if you've noticed how often my throat has locked. Speeches are definitely something that it would be personal and meaningful to write about. And the easiest and biggest first step that's so quick is learn what it means to be a self with a big S, because by the time you're a big S self, it's not you alone presenting. It is everyone together, everyone wanting to feel loved and everyone wanting to feel like they're in the room because they should be in the room, and everyone feeling like they all just want to be okay and happy and fulfilled. And when you show up to a speech like that, it's not one person giving a speech. It's the situation showing up for you here with.
Yeah, that's immediately a different way to view it. Yeah. And I've watched your TEDx talk, so I know how good a public speaker you are. So yeah, so that's fabulous. So I guess 2 questions. A, where is the easiest place for people to get the book? And secondly, how can people contact you?
Great. So book, I think Amazon is the easiest. Just put in Marcy Axelrod or choose to show up or how we choose to show up. I think you'll find me pretty quickly. And then my website, choosetoshow.com. You can find me there.
Okay, lovely. So
please reach out. I really like people to reach out. By the way, the ebook is still 99 cents. So it's practically free. Amazon wouldn't let me make it free. So you can do the ebook and of course the soft covers there.
Okay, lovely. Okay, so I'll get all the links, put them on the show notes. It's easy for people to get the book, change their lives, change their way of showing up, broaden their perspective, because we've all got different perspectives. We've shown that today. And yeah, just change your life just by showing up. So excited to hear how people contact you, how they're showing up, different examples of how it's improving their lives. And we have a recurring question on the podcast, which is, if you could invite 3 inspirational people for dinner, they can be alive or past, who would you invite?
Yes, this is wonderful. So I'm gonna I'm going to start with Chief Seattle. Some of you may have heard of him. He was chief of one of the main indigenous tribes here in America, and he has a quote: "Man did not weave the web of life. We are merely a strand within it, and whatever we do to the web, we do to ourselves." Right?
I'm not familiar. So his name again was?
Chief Seattle, and I can send this to you so that you've got
Yeah, I'm not familiar with him
right
at all.
reference for the podcast notes. Albert Einstein, I'm going to read, there's the quote that I mentioned about how humans are all one. A human being is part of the whole called by us universe. Now, this is a key part of the quote. Now, this is a part limited in time and space. So we experience ourselves and our thoughts and feelings as something separated from the rest. Doesn't that ring true? But it's a kind of optical delusion of consciousness. And this delusion is a kind of prison for us. Think small as self, right? Restricting us to our personal desires and to affection for a few persons nearest to us, right? And it goes on, but the point is, so this is a concept that's within all intelligence, which is the skill for our societal role, right? It's our connectedness. And this is part of what I talk about. So that's Einstein. And then the third one, I'm going to get really personal here. And vulnerable, personal and vulnerable, because I believe that we're all just humans. So let's just take off, the presentation mode. I was in the womb with another baby who didn't make it, and I'm just learning how much of me and how I feel and how I show up in the world is probably from that experience of her. And I think there's a lot of people out there who have early childhood experiences that we take with us and we carry with us. They show up in every relationship that we have, including the one with ourselves. And I want to honor all of us. May we be able to turn those connections that are so young into something of strength and of beauty and not of trauma.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And it kind of encapsulates why you're showing up. You're showing up so much and you're really giving life to everybody that is living I guess a more living within themselves, not really showing up as themselves, which is kind of not maximizing life. So you're really giving us all the opportunity to maximize life. So thank you so much for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we should all feel open. There should be no courage in really just putting ourselves out there because we're all humans having a similar experience.
Yeah. And I love that statement. And I think it's getting to that point where we don't feel that we have to be courageous to be ourselves. Yeah, I just want us to get to that point. And your book really, I think that everybody should be getting this. I think it's one of those books that it really will and can impact us all in different areas of our lives. And that's like, that what's that worth? It's massive, massive.
I really hope so. I really hope so. All I'm
Yeah.
trying to do is, I think what a lot of people are trying to do, all in many different ways. We're all just trying to help the world be a little kinder, be a little healthier and happier, less violence.
And we need that. And I think being authentic and knowing who we are and really showing up as us, that will really stop a lot of what you just said about the challenges that exist in the world today, because people don't really know who they are and we don't have the tools to map that out. So I think your book has really given us the tools to map that out. So Marcy, thank you so much. It's been an absolute delight. I hope that this isn't our last discussion. I hope that we have many more discussions, and hopefully when your next book comes out, we'll be having another amazing conversation.
Well, thank you so much. I certainly hope so as well, Paul. I'm going to come visit you in the UK, and when you come
Do
through,
that.
I have a place for you right here in New York.
Amazing. Well, I love New York, and I've met so many amazing people from the podcast that live in New York. So when I come to New York, which I will be doing, I want to meet you clearly, but I want to meet everybody of all these amazing people. And yeah, I love what you're doing. You have opened my eyes to what showing up is. I was definitely a little bit blind in terms of what showing up means. So literally, I got a far broader understanding of what showing up means. So yeah, so I'm infused to take that to the next level. And I'm excited by people that read this book and how they're using it, how, where they start, whether they're starting at work, and they're starting with their, with their relationships with their partners or their friends, or be anything. So I'm really curious, because reading the reviews on Amazon, you've got loads, but it's impacting people, which is massive.
I hope so. I hope so. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for tuning into this episode of My Perfect Failure. We're always looking to grow the show. So please let us know about what you like, and equally what you don't like. And if you know anybody that is really looking to transform their lives, please do share how we choose to show up with them. Maybe you can gift it for them, or maybe you just need it for yourself. So until the next time, take care for now. Bye.
Thanks for listening to My Perfect Failure podcast. Be sure to visit www.myperfectfailure.com to join the conversation. Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or Google Play. Look out for our next episode.